If you are pregnant, thinking about becoming pregnant, wanting to have a baby, almost ready to give birth, or just mothering your children, your child, and you're looking for any support or witnessing or ideas about how to navigate this or that, The Source is a wonderful space. And I personally lead around 3 calls a month, so it's once a week-ish. And it's an opportunity to come on a call with me and to share what's on your mind, to ask any questions you want. It's very, very informal. It's very welcoming. And if you're looking for that kind of witnessing or support, then I invite you to join. Membership includes all of the live calls. It also includes access to an incredibly vast library of resources, past workshops, salons, and every weekly call that we've had in that space for the past 5 years. It's been 5 years. So there are hundreds, if not thousands of hours of material and resources that you have access to when you join. And it's a wonderful, wonderful space full of amazing women who are incredibly open-minded and who are really mothering off the beaten path. So we talk about some of the most forbidden topics: natural health, natural healing, free birth, of course, wild pregnancy, and ways of mothering that are not generally reflected in the wider culture. So yeah, it's really a great space, and I invite you to join. If you join now, then you can join me on the call later today, and that would be great. I'd love that. I'm not a stalker. I don't have that stalker urge, actually. I did go through a very, very brief stalker period. I shouldn't say that. It wasn't that. I was, how old? I was 15. I was 15 or 16. I was 16, that's right. I was 16 years old, and there was a boy that I liked a lot. And the extent of this was before the internet, so you really there wasn't a lot of really effective stalking to be done, but I remember begging my mother to drive by his house on the way home. So we would unnecessarily drive by this boy's house on the way home from wherever. His house was kind of off of one of the main routes that took us home. So anyway, that's how weird it got. It wasn't really that. I mean, I guess, whoops, bingo bango. I guess it is weird to just drive by someone's house. That is pretty weird, but that's all. That's all that ever happened, I promise. And I have mixed feelings about my mother accommodating this too. She did accommodate that a few times, but that was all the stalking I've ever done. And so I guess maybe I got it out of my system. Maybe in part because it really wasn't very exciting to drive by his house. In the end, it's like, well, I mean, where do you go from here, right? You either stop driving by someone's house because it's not interesting, or things get really weird, and I'm fairly mentally stable and always have been, all things considered. We all have our moments, of course, but anyway, no, I'm not a stalker. So I'm not obsessed with the nuns whatsoever, but I do look at them as they flutter through the church and through the other parts of the non-church, through the church, through the parish. They flutter through the parish, and I wonder if I could ever do that. There's the dog, the 4-legged dog. That's not the 3-legged dog, that's the 4-legged dog. And maybe I wonder because I am so entrenched in motherhood and householding and fecundity, the fecundity of being a mother and marriage. And I find this life really wonderful. I really do. Again, not to say that there aren't struggles and hardships, but I am so grateful to be a mother. I'm so grateful to be a mother. I'm so grateful to have these beautiful children and to have this life right now. And I just, more and more, I want to celebrate that and explore the opportunity in that, which I absolutely know is available to every woman. And I talk about this so much because what I see reflected in our culture most prominently is the story that motherhood is drudgery and that motherhood is hardship and that motherhood is not even a sacrifice, but a kind of erasure of self, which is very, very different from sacrifice. And I'm learning more and more about what this concept of sacrifice really means because of my newfound relationship to the church and God and Jesus and Mother Mary. And I see it. Like I don't want to suggest that oh, that's very loud. Please don't do that. Thank you. I don't want to suggest that, I figured it all out and I understand it. Absolutely not. In fact, the deeper I go into the life of the Spirit and the rhythms of the church and the order of things according to the church and Orthodoxy. Margaret, pass me that spoon. Okay? Yeah, pass me that spoon. The less I feel I know, the less I know. It's so incredibly humbling. But what I absolutely do see is that the joy that I feel about being a mother is actually related to the sacrifice of motherhood. It's related to the ascetic life of motherhood. And that has always been available to me. And I spent so many years as a mother really feeling hard done by and feeling bored. I don't know if bored is the right word. Just feeling dissatisfied, feeling like constantly following the urge to distract myself. And this is part of the story that, again, I think is promoted in our culture, and that's that motherhood is uninteresting and raising children is boring, and that there is more and better gratification to be found in the corporate world or in being an artist even, or in academia, and that if you're really a serious, intelligent woman, then of course you're not going to pursue motherhood. Why would you subsume yourself in such a way? Why would you belittle yourself in such a way? And this is such a terrible inversion. Which brings me again to Ballerina Farm. What does not come back to Ballerina Farm? Actually, I read in one of the articles about Ballerina Farm that people show up at her house and stalk her, which I don't know. She does a hi. Hello, little sweetie baby. Hello, little sweetie. Oh. Anyway, I've really questioned whether or not I should actually publish this little article about Ballerina Farm, and I've written and rewritten it over and over and over again. Because really, I don't actually care at all about Ballerina Farm, and it's not interesting. And this debate, this argument between whether or not motherhood is worthy is just, it's actually completely irrelevant and not fruitful. And I don't have an argument. I'm not interested in arguing with these people, actually. But I am interested in the way that motherhood is perceived and portrayed, and I am also, like I said, immensely interested in talking about my own experience, because more and more women are having this experience. Oh, and this brings me to, I get all the time, people write in all the time to say either funny or nasty or benign things, a whole variety of things about the pipeline, the radical feminist to trad wife pipeline, the leftist blah blah liberal to neocon blah blah pipeline. And this whole pipeline thing, all this pipeline stuff stop. It's so ridiculous, because it's all a pipeline. It's the life to death pipeline, guys. We're all on a pipeline. There's no absence of pipeline. It's all pipeline. Furthermore, I pity those among you. I pity you. You who apparently cannot or will not evolve your thinking, your mindset, your perspective whatsoever. Who isn't evolving? I mean, certainly some people are so committed to their petty grievances, to their political perspectives, to whatever it is that they're not on a pipeline. No? And in the past 5 years, have you not changed your views on anything? Goodness gracious, imagine being someone who over the course of the past 5 years especially has not evolved or jumped on some kind of pipeline. I don't know. It's all silliness. It's all silliness. And maybe today I really will cut my hair. But maybe not. See, it's this part. This is the problem. And yes, don't worry, all of you who have written in to tell me that I should not cut my hair. I'm not going to cut it. I'm just going to trim it, really. It's not even that exciting. Oh, pipelines. Oh, that's another thing. Yes, I wanted to talk. In a previous video, I had spoken a little bit about Anglicanism, and I stopped at a certain point, and I didn't really get to the part where I left. And this is related to the pipeline. So there's a couple of really important things that happened, or a couple of themes that were the deciding factors in leaving Anglicanism for good and in abandoning Anglicanism. I mean, Anglicanism abandoned me. No, Anglicanism is just exactly what it is, and yeah, and I'm not that. So, I mentioned before that the congregation we were part of in Fredericton, New Brunswick, was tiny. It was sort of the only conservative parish in the larger diocese, and we were the youngest people by a long shot. Our children were the only children who were part of the parish, and everyone else was octogenarians and centenarians. What's in between octogenarian and centenarian? 90s, people in their 90s. Oh dear. Come on, yo. Anyway, everyone else was very old. And this is not a problem. This is not a problem. In fact, one of the many benefits, as I see it, of bringing your children to church is that church is one of the last places, it's one of the last institutions, it's one of the last experiences in our modern world, in our contemporary world, that allows people of a multitude of different generations and ages to intermingle and to socialize and to actually spend quality time together on a regular basis and to form relationships. So many families are fractured, so many families live apart, and that's something that I struggle with, certainly, because I'm very close with my mother. But church is one of those places where we can still get together, and there's no segregation by age, or ideally there isn't. I think in many churches there actually is, but overall church is a place where everyone from a multitude of ages and generations and stages of life can gather together and be in communion. And that is really important to me. And I have very fond memories as a child of having very deep conversations with elders in the church. And I think I learned how to converse again through church. So just in so many ways, there are so many benefits, I think, to attending church outside of just a religious experience, right? I think there are a multitude of social benefits on so many levels. So this is one of the many reasons why I have always found that church is very important. Anyway, I think this is a good thing. It wasn't a problem that the church congregation was small. It wasn't a problem that we were the only young people. But what did start to get kind of uncomfortable, actually, was the fact that Lee and I had so many children. So in Canada and in the US, I think, you know, this is maybe probably in Europe as well, probably in most so-called developed world places, the number of children that a family can have before things start to get weird is like 3 or 4. In Canada, certainly where I've lived, the cutoff is really 4 children. Like at 4, you're suddenly a big family and it's verging on weird. But 5 just tips you right over the edge into the realm of like religious freaks and like, what is wrong with these people? How dare they? Who do these people think they are? Indiscriminate breeders, like what is their problem? Weird gross, like, cringy, uncomfortable. Like, what are we going to do with you? Like, people just get really, really uncomfortable with 5 children. Like, it's just like, what on earth are you thinking? And when I became pregnant with our 5th child, mine and Lee's, that was a huge breakdown in our marriage, or potential breakdown. It was a crossroads, I should say, in our marriage. And Lee was, that's a whole other story, but we obviously had the 5th child, and she's our daughter. She's our middle daughter. She's just such a blessing. We just, from the moment that she was born, she was just such an immense blessing, and the sweetest, most wonderful child, as they all are. And that was a huge turning point, because especially for Lee, he instantaneously had a very, very close relationship with our daughter. And we sort of suddenly realized through her birth, in her arrival, that this is actually really wonderful. That having a large family is not actually the weird, twisted, like, suspicious sort of, what would my 9-year-old say? 10-year-old, he's 10. What would our 10-year-old say? Sus. Like, it's not really sus, actually, at all, to have a large family, although a lot of people think that it is. And that's not to say that there are not some large families who have major problems, and for whom the size of their family contributes to various struggles, of course. But that's also true for small families. That's also true in families, single parent, single child families. There's no, it's not the size of the family that determines the health of the family, and there's nothing inherently unhealthy about having a large family. I'm sure I sound very defensive, and it's not, I don't think that what I'm saying comes from a place of defensiveness, because more and more, actually, I am totally at peace with the opinions that other people have of me and of us and of Lee and of our family. And partly that peace comes from now having found a community of people in the Orthodox Church who completely accept and embrace our large family. And this is, again, one of the things about our new church family, community, congregation that is so wonderful. It is a congregation of people from all walks of life. It's not just families of 8 or 10 children, although there are a couple of those. Well, maybe like 2, actually. It's really us and one other family. There's not a ton of people with large families, but there are quite a few families in our congregation who have 3 and 4 children. So I think, and there are tons of babies. So it's a congregation of a lot of young families that are growing their families. But it's a congregation of people from all walks of life: hipsters, bankers, crack smokers, wealthy people, poor people, black, white, Asian. There's people from every background who are part of this church, and it's really, really beautiful. And we feel completely accepted in this congregation, which is very different from the experience that we had in the Anglican Church. And again, Anglicanism has been so informed by woke politics and Malthusian politics as well. And I see this very clearly now, because my experience of growing up in a Champagne socialist liberal family made up of primarily New Democrats was that it's very distasteful to have more than 2 children. It's very distasteful. It's very irresponsible. It's very lower class, actually, to have a large family. And my family were very class conscious, as I think everyone is on some level, unless we are. So this is also where, identity politics, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater in any of these areas, because I think that there actually is a lot of value in, this process. Like, like some version of the struggle session where you actually do look at your conditioning and your biases. There is actually some value in looking at the power dynamics that have informed your ideas. It's just that the conclusions of that are not always wokeness. Pipelines. It's all pipelines. Anyway, these are deep thoughts to be having on a Saturday morning. Yeah, I don't know. But let me just tie up this church story. Where was I? So yes, we started in the Anglican church to feel like the more children we had, the more the people in our congregation just kind of just didn't get it and thought we were weird, and it wasn't anything overt either. These were like nice old ladies who just spent their entire lives listening to the CBC and reading the Globe and Mail. All things that I used to happily do. Maybe reading the New Yorker. Something that I sometimes still do, I guess in a fit of nostalgia. Anyway, it wasn't that we experienced any overt discrimination, but there was subtle discrimination, quite truly. There were a lot of comments like, well, you must be done now, dear. No, you must be done now. I'm like, done with what? Just leave me alone. And if anything, those sorts of comments would sort of, I guess actually in truth, those kinds of comments throughout my life as a mother especially, because I've heard everything under the sun from what is wrong with you? Aren't you aware of overpopulation and climate change? Like, how can you be so irresponsible in having all these children? People have come up to my face and said that. To all of just the subtle little digs, to people who are genuinely curious and who don't intend to be rude, but whose curiosity also comes out in ways that's like, are you aware that you're actually saying this out loud? Like, what is wrong with you? On that note, someone wrote in the other day to say, you look really, really, really tired in your videos, and I really hope you can get some rest soon. Wow. Thank you so much. You know what? I actually am very well rested these days. I feel great. I feel so well rested. I think what you're noticing is the effects of being 44 years old. That's actually what I think you're noticing. I think what you're noticing is the effects of not having Botox. I think that might be what you're noticing. It's not exhaustion. It's not exhaustion. It's just fine lines. It's just the patina of age. That's what it is. So don't worry. Don't worry about me. Have no fear. I'm just a woman in my 40s. That's all. So thank you for your concern. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. If you have any comments about the hair, the face, feel free. And I'm being facetious. And I mean, don't worry. I also get that this is what I'm signing up for. You put your face on the internet, and this is what you're gonna get. You put your real face, that is, on the internet, this is what you're gonna get. This is how I actually look. It's how I actually look. And I'm really very much at peace with it. So comment away. It's all fine. I can handle it. Anyway, I started to feel like the experience of showing up every week at church was, I don't know, and this is how culture and community works, right? You're part of a group of people, and as you evolve and as the group evolves or doesn't, you either remain in the group or you exit the group and find another group. And that's exactly what we've done. And the last straw for me and Lee, for us, for our family, was 2020. Because in 2020, everyone knows what happened. Our little, lovely, sweet unassuming Anglican church in Fredericton, New Brunswick closed immediately during the time of Rona. And actually, we lived close to the priest. We lived in the same neighborhood. Our home was in the same neighborhood as the priest's, and the church was just down the road. It was very idyllic, actually, and I do think about that whole time in our lives with still so much grief and the collective amnesia around Rona and what happened in 2020 and in the subsequent years it's still very disturbing to me. I don't think I'll ever get over it fully. I'm not even sure if I'll ever be able to really fully forgive, although I have, to a great extent, I think, forgiven a lot of people. But I still feel a sense of grief about it, and I will not ever be able to forget the experience of running into our priest just a couple of days after New Brunswick, Canada was shut down. So this is March of 2020. And I took the kids out on a walk in our neighborhood, and I actually ran into him. He was walking too. And he wouldn't come near me. He wouldn't approach me. He stayed 10, 15 feet away from me. And I said to him, you don't believe that this is a real pandemic, do you? Like truly baffled. Truly, hi, what's up? What's up? What's up? What's up?
I'm gonna take Horace and Margaret with me.
I guess so, sure. I respected this man. I liked this man. I had sought spiritual counsel from this man. And it really, I couldn't, in this moment of seeing him and of realizing that he was afraid of me because of the global pandemic, everything kind of disintegrated. Everything just sort of, like, that's, like, it's done. You know, it's done. It's done. And I had that experience of like, oh, it's done. With so many people, with so many institutions, with so many frameworks, thanks to 2020. When a person is so incapable of any kind of rational, critical thought, especially a person who has presented themselves as an academic, as an intellectual, as this priest had, as someone, as a leader, as a wise man, and yet they can't see through something that is so clearly nonsense. But not even just nonsense, but as a spiritual leader, this person would allow this kind of, anyway, it was mind-blowing. It was absolutely mind-blowing. And it was in that moment that I was like, oh, I'm done. Okay, the church is done. Although we actually we went back to church. We tried to go back to church. And we were prohibited from entering because we didn't have papers. Because we didn't have health mandate document papers. And that was it. And actually, that was probably one of the main factors in our decision to sell everything and leave Canada. Because if we can't even go to church, then we don't have anything. We don't have anything. I mean, my husband's family wouldn't see us. They were afraid to see their own grandchildren. Just, the whole thing was so nuts. What do you need, baby? What do you need from me? How can I help you? There are blue jays. Blue jays in the trees. Look at your sweet little hair.
But hello, how do you have
face? You're like a little bird. Oh, I love your sweet face. I'm the luckiest mother in the whole wide world. I love you guys.
I love you too.
Beautiful gardens. Oh. Isn't life interesting, huh? It's always interesting. There's no getting around
I
that.
have brown eyes.
You do have brown eyes. Beautiful brown eyes. Just beautiful, deep brown eyes. Are we gonna go read some stories this morning? It's just the three of us this morning. Everyone else is asleep. Margaret's with Dad. Forrest has gone to sword fighting.
Why don't you ever cut your hair a
Oh
little?
my goodness, listen to you. You think I should cut my hair too? I am gonna cut my hair, actually. I really am, very soon.
But why? It looks,
Why?
no, like cutting it from right.
I'm gonna cut it like here. Just like that, maybe.
Yeah.
It'll still be long, but it's not. I just need to, I think, trim it because all of that part right there, that part right there that needs to go. It looks quite scruffy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.